Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I mean, I'm a huge fan of your work, and yeah, all of it, even the crap. No.
It's just what I wanted to hear.
Yeah. No, but seriously, it's great. And I just read Kaptara, which is hilarious. I hadn't read it in single issues, so I'm glad it got collected and got to read it in trade.
Awesome.
But before we talk about that book specifically, I did want to ask you, because obviously you're a writer and an illustrator, artist,
And a dancer.
and a dancer. I'm sure you're great at karaoke too.
Mhm.
Um, what how do you decide, or what's your process to decide like what story gets what from you? What stories you're going to write versus the ones you're going to draw? Yeah.
Well, it's easy, mostly just based on time. Sex Criminals is the only thing I can draw
Mm,
because it takes because I'm doing penciling, inking, coloring, lettering, design stuff, contributing to like letters page. That takes 7 weeks for an issue just to do that. And so the writing stuff has to be kind of worked around that.
mm-hmm.
So a lot of like lunch hour writing sessions and just before bed writing sessions and writing over my morning coffee. So yeah, Sex Criminals kind of gets the full artistic attention, and then the writing has to happen kind of around that. Because to write a script takes usually about 4 days, 4 kind of intense days,
Okay.
versus again the 7 weeks. So that makes the decision a lot easier. And there'll be like one-offs, like a cover, like if I find there's like a gap between scripts or something, then I'll do a cover job because those are kind of fun and easy and yeah,
Yeah. No, definitely. And
yeah.
it's such a fun book. Just for the
Thanks.
people who haven't read it yet, if you could kind of sum up what this story arc of Kaptara is about. Um,
It's tricky. I'm really bad at the old elevator pitch, but
yeah, and it is a crazy story too. It's hard to sum
it's a little hard
up.
to sum up. Like I keep thinking it's like He-Man meets Wizard of Oz for adults. Because it's essentially a Wizard of Oz style journey. Someone from
Yes.
Earth, kind of like lost in a strange land, but instead of Munchkins, it's He-Man. So I think that kind of sums it up. Yeah.
And there are sort of munchkins, which we'll get to in a
Oh yeah,
second,
yeah.
that are kind of horrible and evil and
They're the
horrible.
worst.
Uh,
They're the worst.
now, obviously, I've heard interviews where you've said that this is kind of like gay saga,
Yeah,
and
that
it.
was a classic mistake. That was, I thought that would be a really good idea to go on like on the stage at Image Expo and say, yeah, it's like it's like this thing that is like beloved by all and is the best thing in comics right now. Yeah, this is like that. Not not the best way to come out of the gate
No,
in hindsight. Yeah, and
well,
also like we didn't build enough romance in the first arc for that to be a thing. So it would leave a lot of people very confused after reading it, going, "This isn't the gay saga. What's happening? This is this is horrific."
I mean, no, there are some similarities. I could say the epic, space scope of it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's I could see how fans of one would be a fan of the other. But as obviously there's a gay lead of color. But there's also a lot of, there's a lot of diversity across the board, racially, and, there's some great female characters as well. How did that evolve? And was it kind of a matter of like, well, we're already making this like uber gay, so let's just throw everybody else in there? Or like, how did these characters evolve?
It was pretty natural. Like I think as writers and artists, you kind of want to do you want to tell the best story you can with the most interesting characters that you can. And so everything kind of evolved naturally. And we knew right off who Keith was going to be, and a lot of it was kind of based on a friend of mine was kind of complaining about the fact that um, in popular culture, a lot of times gay romance is used as a surprise or like a plot twist, like, oh, ta-da, this person's gay. It's like, and that's not really cool. and
Yeah.
it would be nice to have something kind of slowly build between two characters without it being used as a kind of a plot twist. And so with Keith, like we kind of wanted to tell like a long story where he slowly develops like kind of a relationship with somebody, which is going to be a bit more focused on in volume two, because we kind of
Oh, good.
realized volume one was more about being scared shitless and running for your life, which doesn't leave a lot of time for romance. Um, yeah, and all the other characters are just like you just kind of want to fill in the gaps, like you want to create a team, and when you think of like kind of classic teams when we were kids, like you think of an A team, so you've got this kind of guy and that kind of guy and this kind of guy, but the one problem is they're all guys. like clearly they're not actually like thinking it through and actually kind of adding adding people that are actually represented in the world. They're like, oh, this guy represents this trait,
Yeah.
but he's still just like a white guy, and you'll
Yeah.
have your token black guy, and it's like, well, that's not actually what you see when you walk down the street or what you interact with in your life. I was describing to someone the other day who was like, how do you portray stuff like this without making it seem like diversity for diversity's sake? I was like, well, it is diversity for diversity's sake because everything's diverse, or else it looks
Yeah.
fucking weird. Like if I had an artist drawing a street scene, and the street scene featured all white guys and all Toyota Tercels, and and like you'd look at that and be like, well, that doesn't look right. Like, where's the variety that I see in everyday life? So you kind of do have to have diversity for diversity's sake, or else it just
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense when you look at it. And then
Yeah.
beyond that, once you kind of populate the world that way, then you can kind of get into what how these things affect various characters and interactions between characters.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's exactly the answer I was hoping
It's
for.
just
Uh,
it's I find it so weird, like because a lot of it just kind of feels common sense, and sometimes the question will come in. I'll be like, really? Like, is that the question? Because
yeah.
why are you looking at this as a negative instead of a positive? But yeah,
Yeah.
that's what
No,
happens.
I know it's weird that it even has to be a topic of conversation. For me, it does, and it is because it still is a novelty a lot of the time.
Yeah,
And for me, it's so important to see as a reader. I'm a lady of color, and I like seeing these things. So when they pop up, it's like, yes, thank you.
yeah,
Um, but I do want to talk about Keith for a second because
yeah.
he is a really solid, amazing character.
Oh, thanks.
And he's hilarious and he's smart, but he also has plenty of flaws.
Yeah,
Um, and I thought one particular interesting moment was when, in the beginning, he's the science guy on this mission,
yeah,
and so he's not really getting involved in any of the physical stuff. He gets into an altercation with a fellow crewmate who's kind of lifting weights,
yeah, yeah,
and somebody else calls him on the fact that like he was kind of overcompensating in that moment, that he kind of flies off the handle or like baits him with sarcastic comments, and it's all because he probably got picked on a lot as a scrawny gay kid, and so now feels like he doesn't have to take shit from anybody.
yeah.
I mean, let's I would love to hear more about like how you think that will shape him throughout this journey.
Especially in the context of a space adventure where things can go wrong at any moment, and you kind of rely on your team. Um, the point there was made that you kind of you do have to pick your battles sometimes, and you have to kind of figure out where your reactions are coming from. And a character like Keith shouldn't take shit from people, and he's been forced to take shit for so long that sometimes things can kind of explode. And I like the idea of Kaptara, like the planet itself, uh, kind of being not necessarily a fresh start, but it's a place where all those issues that he's had to deal with in society no longer apply. It's kind of like that feeling like when you would start a new school, you go off to college, you'd be like,
Yeah.
now's my time to start new. Like this is that, but for real. Because no matter if you go off to school, you're still dealing with the same kind of shitheads and homophobia and racism, sexism that you've dealt with before. maybe on a
Mhm.
smaller level if you're moving from a small town to like a big city. But to have that all stripped away and to have a character like Keith who's been kind of defensive uh, for a long time, and maybe he's had some issues that we'll get into back in his Earth life. Uh, Again, just no longer apply. Like all that
Yeah.
stuff in Kaptara just doesn't play into anything except when it comes to glomps, these
Yeah.
forest creatures.
Yeah.
So I like the idea of like having somebody who's been met with restrictions forced upon him to all of a sudden have no restrictions and to see where he goes with that, to see how he grows as a hero and a character. You know, he's a bit of a shithead when we start off, and he kind of had to be so he could grow to no longer be that, like to
Right.
have those kind of negative qualities kind of turn around and become positive qualities. It's a tricky thing to kind of pull off, um, and it's hard, like to just have like one issue hit the stands and then people read it and they're like, "What? He's an asshole." Like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, this isn't like the origin of Spider-Man where he's an asshole at the beginning and at the end he's fully Spider-Man in 8 pages. Like we've got a long game plan for something like this.
Yeah. No. And he, um, like, yeah, he was kind of an asshole, but also he was just funny enough to be likable,
Yeah, yeah.
like he and just nerdy enough too. Like he
That's
made the right references and he told the right
yeah,
jokes,
that's
so it
that's
was okay.
that's kind of my hope because like he represents myself and he represents a lot of my friends who kind of deflect with humor uh, and so I kind of yeah, if somebody takes issue with him, I'm like, oh man, that means they don't like me. That's exactly how I would act. I would be scared shitless and making inappropriate jokes at the worst times.
Oh my God, I think that's most of us.
Yeah.
But yeah, speaking of the humor, because obviously this is kind of a fantasy comic,
Mhm.
and fantasy has a tendency sometimes to take itself too seriously.
Yep.
Like it's all very like highfalutin, and this is not that.
No,
This is
no.
very snarky. What's your kind of personal relationship with the fantasy genre, and how did you apply that to this?
I've got no relationship with the fantasy genre. That's actually like a joke between Matt and I because Ed Brubaker, do you know him?
Yes.
He's a
Well, I don't know him. If you want to introduce us, feel free.
sure, sure. Well, the problem is if I introduce you to him, he'll just talk your ear off about Lord of the Rings. Like he loves Lord
Oh,
of the Rings, and
see,
both
we can't hang then.
okay, good. Whereas Matt and I, at that point, um, had no interest in that stuff at all. When I was like, I think 10, 11 years old, I remember taking The Hobbit out of school, the school library. I read the first 40 pages and I said, this is fucking bullshit. And I threw it across the room and I've never picked up a fantasy book since. Which is weird because like I read all the superhero comics, which are just as fantastical and ludicrous. And I can somehow accept that, but as soon as someone like goes on, oh, and Eredor, heir to the Flaglabon of Dragonclaw, like I'm just like, I'm gone. I am gone. So I, yeah. So
I laugh because it's so familiar because this is exactly my reaction to The Hobbit when I was 10.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. And so it's funny because like, so I pitched Matt like before we did Sex Criminals, I pitched him on the idea that we should do a fantasy comic, knowing nothing about fantasy, like just like a total Game of Thrones, like David Eddings, Tolkien kind of thing. Um, and that's when he pitched me Sex Criminals, which was an obviously better idea coming from a better place than disinterest. So yeah, I mean,
wow.
like, it's so weird because like this kind of like the Kaptar world is very much like kind of He-Man inspired, which is not fantasy and it's not sci-fi and it's such its own thing. It's like, yeah, it's like a guy who looks like a barbarian, but he's shooting lasers and riding these like cat tanks and there's magic and there's technology and it's so big and dumb. Like I really don't know what kind of category this comic is. Like,
Yeah, it's it's very strange, but it's so much fun. It's like it doesn't even matter. It defies
well, it's
categories.
funny because like Sex Criminals has the same problem. Like I think Volume One did really well in Amazon listings under literary, Like it was just classified as literary. And then the second volume, for some reason, did really well in sci-fi. It became like sci-fi, like #1 in sci-fi. This one is #1 in literary. I'm like, well, what's the third? Is the third one going to be fantasy or just erotica? Like I don't know. I don't know how you apply genres to half these things anymore.
It's true. It's a weird marketing thing.
Yeah.
Um, uh, but it's funny talking about how Keith kind of escapes like all of the bullying and the bullshit that he has to deal with on Earth and is in this new place. Because once we get to the Glumps, this at least where they live, and even Melvon
No,
the wizard,
yeah.
he both he and the Glumps kind of seem representative of all of the bullshit that he's trying to escape.
Yeah.
So it exists here too. Talk to me a little about your intentions with the Glumps.
Yeah, the idea, like in my head, like because, like I said, I knew Kaptara would be kind of overall devoid of that kind of bullshit. Like no one cares about your sexuality, race. There's no sexism or anything like that, for the most part. But I also like the idea of nature abhorring a vacuum. So having all of that bad bullshit just kind of ending up in the Glumps, then having them like self like just like kicking themselves out of society and to form this group. Like they're supposed to be Smurfs. Like they're technically there are Smurfs. And you know, I pitched the idea to Kagan that they were just shitty, like just terrible cannibals and like sexist racists. They're just the worst the world has to offer, in which both good and bad people on the planet can get along in the idea that they all hate the Glumps. Like I love just relegating and putting all those bad characteristics onto these characters. And the funny thing is, like, Kagan and I wanted to have them just be like the worst and just add all these terrible qualities to them, but we had no specific target in mind. But then, like, when the book comes out, like everyone like posts online, like, oh yeah, the Glumps are clearly these guys and those guys and this guy, like,
Yeah.
like whoever's shitty in your life, the Glumps represent, which is great because then those people also don't recognize them as being them. Like some MRA type is going to be like, no, they clearly don't represent us because these are terrible people. But like, if you're a shitty person, you never recognize that you're a shitty person, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I like the Glumps just representing everything that's bad in the world and online, especially.
It's true. No, they to me they were both internet trolls and in general, and specifically gamergaters.
Yeah, we
I
got to.
totally saw a lot of that stuff in there, and
It's funny, yeah. Like somebody wrote an article that was just all about how Glumps are gamergators. Like it was like for like some Houston news site,
yeah,
and like that wasn't our intention. But I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. If you see that, like I totally get it. And then it was just, like seeing the comments afterwards were just like, because as soon as you say the word Gamergate people come out. So the comments were
yep,
just filled with people like, no, these aren't us. Like I haven't seen anywhere where the writer says it's us, and there's no
yeah.
allusion in here to us. Like these are terrible people and these little characters, and they can't clearly be us. Like, hey, they're not you. I mean, because like I didn't write it to be you, but if everyone's saying it is you, then maybe you gotta check yourself.
Oh my God.
Oh, glomps. They're so
Um,
fun. They're so hideous too. Like Kagan did such a good job designing them. Like just for
I
me to
just
say like, oh yeah, they're shitty Smurfs, and then he's got these like really tiny, gross faces on them, just like where it collapses in.
they totally look like little piles of shit with hats on.
Yeah,
Like that's exactly what they
yeah,
look
and
like.
that's exactly what he was going for. Just like kind of like clumps like shit. Like, oh, I love it. I love it. So good.
Oh my God, they're amazing. Um, I do want to talk a little bit about the motivational orb. Um,
Sure.
because this is just so silly, but it's also amazing. Like I found myself rooting for the orb
Yeah, yeah,
throughout this. Like the orb, and like the orb comes in and like punches someone in the face at one point. Like
yeah,
like it's a real character.
yeah.
How did that come about?
That's like the oldest character in the book, like in terms of like what we came up with, because I think I created Motivational Orb in like 2001,
Oh God.
like because we shared a studio together, and Cameron Stewart, you know Cameron Stewart,
Hmm?
he was doing Sea Guy with Grant Morrison at the time.
Oh my God, Sea Guy. Yes.
And in the first volume, there's a two-page spread about like this old battle that every hero on the planet had with like this giant Galactus-style anti-monitor character. And he needed to fill that page with as many characters as possible. And Kagan and I were just like coming up with a whole bunch and rattling them off and like giving them to Cameron. And one of them is the motivational orb. Like you can actually see in that spread this like little orb flying through space with all these heroes. And it's technically his first appearance.
Oh God, that's so amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I love like he's just been kind of an ongoing joke between Kagan, myself, and Cameron for years. And as soon as we decided to do Kaptara, I'm just like, he's got a home. He's got a home. Like, I love the idea that that he can rally people. Like he knows, like his power is that he can say exactly what needs to be said at the moment it needs it the most.
Yes.
Like that's it. That's the entirety of the motivational orb. And yeah, it's such a ludicrous thing that he's so respected. Like everyone actually gets it. Like no, he's the most
right.
important part of this team. This orb.
Now, I did notice, and I don't want to spoil anything, but like, there's a full color spread of like a bunch of different people, and there's like a red orb, that says something kind of mean, and I'm wondering, are we gonna see, a foil for motivational orb, anytime soon?
Yeah, the character you're referring to is the Vicious Circle.
Okay, I'm there with you.
Yeah, I think you kind of get the gist of what it's all about. It's like essentially the demotivational orb, and yeah, they'll be making an appearance for sure. All those characters will pop up at some point. Kagan drew something like 80, 85 different characters in that final spread, and like 95% of them he came up with just on his own, just like. It's insane. He's so talented and so funny. And Vicious Circle is one of my favorites.
It's amazing.
Then they'll all play a part in the next volume. Like we're gonna have like giant battles, and we can populate it with all these like insane characters. Yeah.
Very cool.
Comics.
They're insane.
They're insane.
Thank you so much. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know your time is very precious. You've got to go draw and write stuff that's insane for us to read. But thank you again so much, and I totally recommend Captara to anybody who's going to be watching this. It makes a great holiday gift.
It comes out on December 23rd. So if you're like me,
a late shopper,
then hit the comic store on that Wednesday. I will also point out that the trade is $9.98, which makes it the cheapest image trade on the racks. I lowered it by 1 cent, just so I could have the bragging rights to say that.
Just so you could say that. That's amazing. Yeah. Beautiful. Well, thank you for saving us all a penny. We really appreciate it. And and thank you so much again for talking with us. We love your stuff, and keep it coming.
All right. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.